Okay, let's get cracking. Today's guest is an explorer, broadcaster, and storyteller following a 4-month solo kayak journey along the coast of Greenland.
This is what beer does. I totally blame the beer.
What was your diet?
Seal, fish, whale, reindeer. The doctors said don't do it because you're not adapted, but I totally disregarded that and did it anyway.
Hello and welcome to the Farmette podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Warhurst, and this is a show where we talk about the importance of the countryside and how it has shaped my guest's life. I have asked my guests to choose from a selection of themes from the countryside that have directly impacted their life. Today's guest is an explorer, broadcaster, and storyteller with an enduring curiosity about the relationship between food and the environments that sustain us. Following a 4-month solo kayak journey along the coast of Greenland, where he lived alongside Inuit communities and immersed himself in traditional food practices, he began asking bigger questions about what food really means in the modern world. From fermented seal and microbiome science to ultra-processed foods and food sovereignty, his work explores how what we eat is shaped by ecology, culture, history, and identity. With a forthcoming BBC documentary, a book in progress, and a growing profile as a speaker, he invites audiences to look beyond the plate and reconsider our connection to the landscapes that feed us. Mikekeen, this is your rural life. Welcome to the Farmette podcast.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. Thanks, Tamara. So glad to be.
It is so lovely to have you on the podcast. And actually, when I first started, listeners, thinking about this podcast, you were one of the first people that I spoke to about the podcast and said, I am going to do a podcast and I'd love to get you on. So I'm thrilled to have you on it today.
Amazing. Thank you.
Now, Mike, I'm really glad, firstly, that you're alive and kicking because you have been on some pretty gnarly adventures. And I think I'm going to start with the beginning. What on earth led you to firstly start doing these adventures, but also, secondly, these ancient diets?
Yeah, I think my childhood had a lot to do with it. My folks took me and my siblings abroad. We lived in Saudi, Nigeria, Germany for quite a big part of my formative childhood. So I think that gave me the bug to travel and that kind of open-mindedness to look outside your home borders.
Yeah.
And the second big thing, what I think, looking back, was an argument with environmental health. At the time, must be about 9 or 10 years ago. I had a pub in just in the outskirts of Ipswich here, and I wanted to make my own Parma ham. And I've been a chef for 30 or 40 years now, and I thought, yep, great, shouldn't be a problem. But he flatly refused me permission to make Parma ham, saying it was unsafe, which astounded me because my my argument about that was, hang on a sec, the Italians and Spanish have been curing meat very successfully and famously for thousands of years. How is this not a thing? It doesn't tick the boxes of the temperature because you've got to keep it around 11 degrees C, which is obviously outside of fridge temps. So that kind of got me thinking, this is completely ridiculous. And then you start thinking, yeah, my whole life has totally revolved around sell-by dates and fridge temperatures and fridges and electricity. And, you just start thinking, we've only had that kind of thing for a generation or two. What the hell did we do for the last couple of million years? I didn't really know much about anthropology or our evolution and I'd never really been taught about food in school. The only thing most of us come out of school with is like an apple strudel or a Victoria sponge. You don't get taught anything about where it comes from and the mechanisms that food undergoes to get from the field or the forest to your plate. So I had a massive kind of rabbit hole experience. And at the time, I'd just gotten divorced and I was living above this pub that I was running. And I was thinking, hang on a sec, what's tying me here now? Why do I feel I have to stay here? It's not like I'm making any money. I'm working 100 hours, a week chefing and trying to make ends meet. I don't have to do that. So I pitched a book to a publisher. This is pre-COVID, about following the Norse as they travelled westwards across the Atlantic, and as they go across from Norway to Faroes, Iceland, and Greenland, the environment gets more extreme, and it seemed the fermentation practices got more extreme as well. So, yes, and you get to Greenland and you have the most incredible foods that the EHO guy who spoke to me about Parma ham would have kittens if he knew about the stuff that was happening in Greenland, and it totally shook my world and made me totally reevaluate everything I've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years as a chef, because none of the foods that I was looking into should have been safe to eat at all. Not even close to it. So it was that was a kind of big time in my life. It was about 8 years ago, I guess.
Okay, so since then, over the last 8 years, tell us what you've been doing. What adventures have you set off on?
Yeah, so I got a book contract just pre-COVID to visit these places and check out the fermentation, and they were the only company to say who were interested, because at the time fermentation was still quite niche, and they said if you chuck some sexy Vikings into the mix, we can kind of make it commercial. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll try and do that. And then I went off on my travels, and then COVID hit, and they dropped half their roster, including me. So I'd lost the contract for this book, but by that time I'd already spent that money and on the travel, and I was out there.
Wait, so they dropped the book whilst you'd already started it, started the whole thing?
Yeah, they'd give me just over £2,000, I think it was, for travel expenses, which covered most of it at the time. And then I was out there, and they obviously cut back, and I was one of the ones they cut back on, which at the time, like most things,
Mike,
it's complete disaster. But like a lot of these things, these failures and screw ups often turn into unexpected
positives,
opportunities, and it totally did. And I was out there, and Greenland's such an incredible country. It's population wise, it's really small, so you make contacts really, really, really well. And I was out there, writing, still kind of researching it, even though I didn't have any kind of end goal now. And then I got invited back to cook for this TV crew that were filming a gold prospecting series in the south. And then I got invited back again the next year to cook at this remote camp down from the capital in the fjord, from Nuuk. And it was over a couple of beers with a Greenlandic guide. We were talking about the language, and there's a lot of cues. It's totally alien to any kind of European-based language, and there's a lot of guttural cues. And kayak, the canoe thing, comes from Greenlandic kayak, and the town right in the far south is called Kahotok, and the town right in the far north is called Karnak. So there's like loads of cues all over that. Wouldn't it be cool? This is what beer does. I totally blame the beer. Wouldn't it be cool if you could kayak from Kahotok to Karnak, and it kind of and that was it. And then like a lot of these things as well, you kind of tell enough people, and you hit this kind of critical mass there. It gets more embarrassing to not do it than to do it, because you've told.
Yeah, you're then committed.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was it. I obviously told enough people, and then thought, oh God, I better have do a bit of research and try and do it. And then I'd only been kayaking a couple of years beforehand, but looked into it. It was like 3,000 miles, and I thought, if I could do 30 miles a day, that's 100 days. Doesn't sound too bad. Third of a year.
Wow.
I started talking to sponsors and got some equipment, and then thought, hang on a sec, I'm going to be doing between 5 and 10 hours of kayaking a day. This could be really boring. So perhaps I should try and add some more kind of interesting science type experiments into that. And when you're in Greenland, it's incredible. It's there's no agriculture there for starters. It's just all ice, rock, and water, and that's it.
And freezing cold.
Oh yeah, winter's immeasurable. Even spring, anything outside of summer, and from the south is pretty miserable. And you think the Inuit have survived there successfully for 6,000 or 7,000 years, but with no GPS or Gore-Tex or all the stuff that I had at the time. I think how they're making kayaks out of driftwood and seal skin, and same with all their clothing, and their shelter is all made from what's in the landscape, which was incredible. And I was thinking, they don't eat any vegetables or fruit. There's very little there in terms of vegetation to eat. So their diet historically has always been kind of keto carnivore along those lines, heavy protein
Yes.
and fat.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, perhaps I should give that a go, see what it does to me. And I got in touch with a couple of microbiologists, a couple of doctors. The doctors said don't do it because you're not adapted. Only the Inuit can do it. But I totally disregarded that and did it anyway.
I was going to say, didn't listen to them.
Yeah. It's just like all this kind of questioning authority is something that you're steered away from very much as a kid. But the older you get, the more you start to question it and realize it's all kind of a tissue of lies. It seems to be a lot of the time. But anyway, so I got a couple of universities involved and got blood tests and full medical tests before, during, and after. And in 2023, in April, I set off from Kayaking in the south. It took me 4 months to do the whole thing, but I'd lost in the first 4 weeks, which is when I first stepped on scales. I lost 2 stone in that first 4 weeks.
In the first 4 weeks.
Yeah,
and what were you just eating? What was your diet?
Seal, fish, whale, reindeer, pretty much that in that order, and at least half of that was raw. So it was really.
Oh my goodness me!
It was a real change, and until I started, I'd been on a kind of a very traditional Western diet, which is not my usual diet anyway. I'm kind of low carbs, but I had to be on a kind of a relatable diet so that the actual results are going to be relatable to the average.
Oh, I see. Yes,
the average person back in the UK. So
I
went straight from my kind of carb heavy English diet onto carnivore, keto, a lot of it raw, which was fine. It was quite explosive for the first 7 days, which I'd been warned it can be. Health wise, I felt fine. It was just quite dramatic. I'm sure.
Did you find that you sort of went through like a real lack of energy or a bit of a slump before you started feeling like your body started getting used to it?
No,
or
not at
was
all.
it just straight away fine?
Straight away was fantastic. Yeah, I was kind of warned that there's a thing called keto flu or carnivore flu, which is a kind of a bit of sluggishness or those kind of flu-like symptoms when you totally change your diet like that. But I didn't hit that at all. I just went straight onto amazing energy, great sleep. But I'd lost 2 stone, which I wasn't overweight particularly when I left. So I went down from like 90 kilo, which is my kind of average English diet weight, down to 75. And I thought, oh, this is my body using up all my energy reserves. And at some point, if it continues, I'm just going to pass out 10 kilometers out to sea and no one will ever see me again. But luckily blind ignorance and optimism carries you a long way sometimes. And I just carried on. But that weight stayed at 75 kilo for the remaining 3 months, which was.
So you didn't drop anymore?
Didn't drop any more at all, no. Which was amazing. And my energy levels were great. Sleep was great, even though it's 24-hour a day sunlight at the time. You don't sleep for an 8-hour stretch. You just sleep for an hour and a half and then wake up, do a potter about a bit and then have another kip if you need to. So you kind of have 6 to 7 hours of sleep during the day. So that wasn't a problem. And then the results were great. All the blood tests at the end were fantastic. But what I really wanted to kind of separate out was how much of an impact had that physical kayaking had on that weight loss. Was it half? Was it half or fully kind of responsible for it? So I went out the following year to East Greenland for 3 months, exactly the same diet, but no kayaking. I was working in this remote hotel. And I went down to, I'd gone back up to 90 kilo again, and I went down to exactly the same weight, 75 kilo, within 5 weeks. So it took slightly longer.
How fascinating.
But I stayed at that 75 kilo again for the whole time. And then I was on the food program with Dan Saladino and Dr. Chris Van Tulliken, and we were talking about the impact that exercise has on weight loss. And unless you're on some kind of some kind of Olympian regime of exercise or training, actual exercise isn't going to have any impact on your weight loss. It's obviously super important because it's great for your muscles
and your blood pumping.
your health.
Yeah.
Weight wise, it's not going to make difference. So it's all about what you're
What you
eating,
eat.
what you eat, which has kind of become my philosophy now. Obviously, eat your environment,
Yeah.
and all the talks I give on are about how we should be looking at how we've evolved with food, and it's not just that kind of really human short termism that we've got. As we just don't look outside the supermarket now, which obviously you must have come across a lot in your
Totally.
career. Yeah,
All the time.
people on
Yeah, all the
podcasts.
time. And this is something that I was going to speak to you about. Firstly, how did you feel when you came home, like in between all these your adventures? Did you try and stick to a carnivore diet when you came home, or was that really difficult?
Yeah, great. No, that's a really good question, because part of the whole science thing is they want a before, during, and after. So before I do any of these things, it's normally 6 weeks. I go on a relatable Western diet,
Oh,
and
I
then during is
see.
obviously the keto, and then when I come back, I have to go back to that relatable diet again, just to measure, how quickly my gut microbiome bounces back or changes back to, to kind of account for the new diet.
Yeah.
So I go back onto a kind of a carb heavy diet, but every time I come back from one of these things, it opens my eyes even further, and I get not more extreme, but my carbs and sugar is way down now.
Yeah.
If I had the choice, I wouldn't be eating any carbs at all. And then because my research has led me through the last 2 to 6 million years of evolution as well, and what we've evolved with, and how incredibly long a time that is. We have no idea. Like 2 million years is about 60,000 generations. That's like and that
It's mind blowing, actually, when you think
crazy.
about it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's only in the last 1 or 2 generations that we've been on this industrial diet with all the UPFs and chemicals in our food. But it's only in the last 10,000 years that we've really had this high carb diet as well. Because before that, 99.999% of our diet would have been hunter gatherer. So
Yeah.
yeah, meat, fish, whatever we can forage. Um, and if anyone's ever tried to forage a decent amount of grain or wheat or legumes or anything and got carbs from it, it's really difficult, and you
Yeah.
have to process it. You can't just eat it raw. You've got to ferment it or cook it. So it really opened my eyes, and I kind of get annoyed at myself that it's taken me 30 years as a chef to kind of really start to question the food.
No supermarket or government or large food company wants us to go back to this basic
Yeah.
diet of hunter gatherer, because they make so much money, obviously, from processed foods. So how do you see how could we eat more meat and go back to that hunter gatherer? Because actually,
Um,
from what I see, it's near impossible for the general public.
yeah, I think you're right. It's I think that to try and get back to that with 7 to 8 billion people on the planet is virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Um, Also, you've got huge problems with animal welfare concerns. Changing climate. It's all, everything's stacked against it. But every time I come to the kind of the sticking point in any of these kind of potential solutions to the food system, it hits a brick wall in the form of money.
Yeah.
Because we're built and totally intertwined with the capitalist system, which is the whole raison d'etre for supermarkets and pretty much every food and farming company out there is to make money. And unfortunately, making money isn't isn't aligned with our health. Well, very rarely. So it
Yeah.
is really really difficult. But what is fantastic about what I've learned about the human body is how adaptable we are. It's such an incredible fine-tuned instrument, that as long as we keep that kind of basic, try and revert or keep the stuff as simple as we can, and
Yeah.
avoid adding all these extra hurdles to our signaling pathways, like all these chemicals, hormones, antibiotics, fertilizers that are getting into our food and getting into our body. all those totally scramble our communication systems within our body, from our mind to our gut and immune system and everything. So
Yeah.
it's and it doesn't matter how many podcasts or how many supplements or experts on social media are shouting at you saying you got to try this, you got to try that. You
Don't
just
keep it simple. Yeah.
you just got to take it back to,
Yeah.
okay, how have we got to have such an incredible tool in the form of our body over millions of years, and it wasn't by supplements and all this kind of stuff. It was from making the most of what we've got, because we've evolved with that food for a reason. So keep it as simple as you can is pretty much the only thing you need to know.
Yeah.
Which
On
is
your
increasing.
adventure, did you get to a point where you had some food, like let's say it was a piece of seal that was looking pretty dodgy, and you thought, oh God, if I eat that, I'm going to be really ill, but I don't have anything else, so I'm going to eat it. Did you get ill?
I've never got sick from any of the indigenous or extreme fermented foods that I've had, and I've had some
Pretty grim stuff.
I've had 12-month-old seal that's been crawling with maggots, and
Wow.
it's just been left out at ambient temperature, and I've eaten it and thinking, oh, I've got a 3 or 4 hour boat ride, and I'm all
Yep.
zipped in a dry suit. This is not going to be pretty if it goes wrong. But no, I've never got sick of any of it, which is incredible. And the most recent Greenland thing that I've just returned from was taking that to its kind of next logical step, which was eating mikekeen, which is fermented seal, for 4 weeks. So I ate. So I got there on day one. Bought a seal that had been shot from a hunter and fermented it at about 17 or 18 degrees. So meat, no salts, so yes, room temperature here in England. Fermented it for 4 weeks and took
Wow.
samples of it, and then within 7 days it was stinky. It was really high,
Oh.
and I got to a point about 2 weeks that I was thinking, botulism is a real issue here, and it wasn't just me thinking, oh, this would be a great idea. It's based on indigenous practices and ancestral
Yeah.
food that have been used to, and stuff that I have eaten over the last 5 or 6 years. So it wasn't just a clickbait gimmicky type thing. It was, okay, how is this possible? So I tested it out myself, and I was at least 3 days away from any kind of medical assistance. There wasn't even a nurse in this settlement that I was in. It's you know
In the
um,
middle of nowhere.
yeah, right in northwest Greenland.
Yeah.
But I ate the seal, which was fermented really, really high, and I ended up eating, on average, about 200 gram of it a day, which is what, 7 or 8 ounces, and that was it. Nothing else. No coffee, no nothing. Just this seal for a month,
And water.
and water,
Yeah.
and all my kind of personal observations, energy, sleep, were fantastic. My mental health, I was really clear. My hair and my nails grew like crazy, which I hadn't expected. I looked like some
Wow.
homeless man. I was just like sprouting everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've taken, this was with UCL and Nuuk University. So I did before, during, and after stool samples, and then blood, extensive bloods before and after. And then also I've taken samples of the fat, the muscle, and organs from the seal pretty much every day over that period of 4 weeks as it fermented, just so that we can track my health and my bloods and my
Along with what's
microbiome.
happening within the seal. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
looking at the bacterial content of the seal, because this is incredible. For me as a chef to better do that was amazing. And
Absolutely extraordinary.
is that possible? Can you recreate that here in England, or is it specific to the Arctic? And I'm doing some work with the University of Michigan now, where they've got over 200 documented examples of tribes in the tropics who do something very similar. So, where an indigenous tribe has got a fresh kill, like say an antelope, instead of eating it straight away,
They let it.
they'll bury, or
Yeah.
they'll hang the cuts up for
Yeah.
bacteria and flies to work their magic on it, so it pre-digests it, and then they'll eat it a week later when it's got maggots in it, or it's really high, because that bacteria has done all the heavy lifting for them, so they get to immediately get the benefits of that food, rather than waste all their internal energy by processing
By
you know
processing it all.
a difficult to digest meat, which is incredible.
Wow. Did
And
your did your like gag reflexes because
Oh, great.
I'm just thinking if I came across a fermented seal for 4 weeks, did you have to train? Like at the beginning, did you find it really hard to get that down?
No. Well, I think if I'd gone straight from 20 years of eating very standard English food, then it would have been a shock to the system. But
Yeah,
because I've been out there for 7 or 8 years now, 2 or 3 times a year, and I've eaten a lot of weird stuff, I'm fine with it.
you're
And
okay. Yeah,
this other thing that we're doing with the University of Michigan is looking at disgust as a human reflex, because it's not a hardwired reflex. It's culturally learned. It's our environment. So if you go up to northwest Greenland, like Karnak or Savisivic, and you've got the kiviak, which is these birds that are stuffed inside a seal, left to ferment for 6 months. The kids tuck into it like the
because it
toddlers.
is what it is. They've learned. They've grown up
Yeah,
with it.
because they're
Yeah,
used to it. Yeah, they're
yeah,
used to it. You know, kids in England and across the Western world, famously just into nuggets and pizza, and trying to get anything different down their necks is really really difficult. Look at Jamie Oliver and all
yeah,
the documentary stuff that
yeah,
he
yeah,
had.
yeah. Totally.
Which is crazy, but it is a learnt reflex. It's just our cultural environment. So that is something, as our brains got bigger from, I don't know, 4 to 2 million years ago, we didn't have the nous to go and get fresh kills of big animals. So a lot of the stuff that we ate would have been fermented and scavenged. We would have chased
Yeah.
kind of bigger predators off the carcasses and eaten what was left. So that kind of roadkill stuff is what we would have been eating for hundreds of thousands of years. And
Oh,
even fire was only really discovered and used to any extent between 600,000 and a million years ago. So we've got a
cooking
good,
something. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
for a good million years before that,
It's just
we
raw.
would just been eating raw and fermented meat and fish.
Yeah.
And that's it. Constantly comes back down to that kind of short-term view that we have as humans about not being able to, like we'll go and get drunk on a Saturday night despite having a hangover for the next 2 days or whatever, because we just don't think that far ahead. We get, it'll be fine. So I think part of our kind of outlook onto those huge amounts of time is very similar to that.
So we're gonna jump away from your adventures and
Yes.
these incredible diets and sort of find out, I guess, what's been your journey. And we're going to start with the person that has anchored you and taught you about the countryside and about life. Who is that person that you've chosen today?
Um, a single person, it's hard to kind of pin down, really. I think it would be teachers from my old school in Stoke-by-Nayland, which unfortunately isn't there any longer. But the whole kind of community, it was a very rural school, so there was a lot of farmers' sons and a lot
Yeah.
of people who are in farming families there. So yeah, there's not one person that's a standout. They were my countryside guru at all.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was that kind of feeling, and because I didn't spend a long time in England during my childhood, it was like 6 months here, 6 months there. Most of it in Suffolk, in between going back to Saudi Arabia or Nigeria. I kind of remember those as kind of almost times of like an oasis where you come back and it's this completely different environment, and you're dropped into a group of friends that you pick up from like 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you're lifted and taken out again to this completely different place in Saudi or Nigeria. So yeah, not one person sticks
That's
out,
like
but it's
such
a
a
general
stark,
community.
for a child, like those two places in England are such a stark difference. Like
Yeah.
be thrown back and forth between those two environments. Like actually for what you do now, it must have been, that's probably why you're so good at adjusting. You had to
Yeah,
do that from such a young age.
yeah, and and everything has a kind of as its place in my whole kind of eat your right environment thing that I do nowadays is like looking at food poisoning and microbiomes, and you know a big part of our kind of view towards food is that if you go to Mexico India or somewhere, you get Delhi belly or Montezuma's
Yes.
friend or
Yeah.
something like that, and
Yeah.
they blame it on food poisoning. But a billion Indians can't have food poisoning. It's
Yeah.
solely because our modern environment, we can go to Heathrow and then 12 hours later we'll be in a completely different environment with totally different bacteria and everything. So it's a massive shock to our system. Whereas historically and evolutionary wise, we've taken generations to move that far. We could have never done that before. So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
that's why it's such an upheaval nowadays.
God, when you start thinking of it like that, it really is crazy where we've got to living in this day and age now,
Yeah, no,
from where we've come.
it's incredible, and so I get quite annoyed at myself and not realizing it. Decades ago, really, when I was first getting into chefing, it's an incredible thing, and as a species, we evolve so slowly to any change. It takes us between 20 and 50,000 years to adapt to any big dietary change, which is why even the agriculture happening 10,000 years ago, less than a third of the world can process lactose past infancy still. And we have gluten
Yeah.
gluten allergies and
Gluten.
all this kind of stuff,
Exactly. Yeah.
despite us having gluten for 10,000 years, because we've changed it so much anyway. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's move on to the place that lives in you. Now, you've spoken about Greenland, obviously, and Suffolk. But what countryside place for you feels like part of who you are?
Here in Suffolk, definitely. Yeah, I've got kind of childhood memories of coming back to kind of Ashington and Bewers, a very rural part of Suffolk, and time spent catching up with your mates on the bikes and summer holidays or whatever. And this is pre-internet and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And mum kicks you out of the house and you just shoot
When
off.
we actually communicated with each other.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like it's almost like Famous Five type stuff in my memory. Anyway, I'm sure reality was slightly different. But you go off on your bikes, and you don't go back home till dinner's ready or whatever. So you're out the whole day.
Yeah.
No one knew where you were. You were out on your bikes. You just take some cheese and tomato sandwiches out and go and have adventures.
Can you imagine parents like letting their children out now doing that? They just
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah. No,
And
it's just
this is where our society is going so wrong, isn't it? We're so sort of helicopter parenting, worrying, like not giving them the opportunities to be free and to go and have fun with their friends. And
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
social media and, gadgets, which have basically destroyed our friendships, really.
yeah. Yeah. It's a worrying kind of direction we're going in, not just on the food front, but look at the geopolitical situation at the moment. It's just it's like something out of a really bad movie,
Yeah.
and it just gets worse every day. How is that possible? And then social media, it's got its good sides, but obviously the bad sides are that loss of kind of interpersonal relationships and communication, and everyone's got their face buried in a screen.
Yeah.
And you've got, like I said, the loudest person wins kind of on the internet. The ones who shout the loudest get the most followers. It's
Yeah.
such a crazy state of affairs.
Well, let's talk about a possession, and I'm imagining that it might not be a kayak, because I think having spent that long in a kayak, I think you probably are done with it. But what object from rural life sort of carries a story for you, and how did it come into your life?
Um, a catapult of
A catapult. I love it.
yeah,
That really is Swallows and Amazons.
yeah. It is. It's very much like kind of bandaged knee and a catapult out the back of your shorts kind of thing. But I've always had a fascination with catapults. Yeah, from trying to make your rubbish one, though it pings back in your face and all the stick snaps, to having these ones with the arm brace, and just that. I used to have ones when I was a kid, and you go to a sports shop and you kind of trying to nag your mum to buy you this fancy catapult with some ball bearings to shoot, because my time here in England has always been very rural, and you're involved with pheasant shoots and deer culls and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and the catapult always had that romantic. That was it's that connection. It hasn't got any mechanics in it really. It's something that you can make out of materials that are around. And I remember I had an incredible Hulk catapult in Saudi actually, and me and my brother used to go and terrorize people on this kind of this compounds where all the expats used to live.
Yes.
And I remember, I was behind a wall once, and I was trying to shoot someone. I can't remember who I was trying to shoot. And my mum was watching me from down the end of this thing at me pinging this stone at someone.
Oh my
I
God!
didn't hit them, but oh my word, I got a walloping for that. But
Did you have any luck with any sort of birds or
no, rubbish,
actually killing
totally
anything? No.
rubbish. I was bad at catapulting as I am at fishing. It's like I had a fishing rod and a kayak, and I think I caught one tiny cod the
Oh
whole time.
no!
That was it.
That was it.
Luckily, I wasn't relying on my own prowess as a hunter to feed me. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I didn't realize. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe you need some practicing then for the old
Yeah,
fishing.
I had a rifle with me just in case of polar bears, but luckily I didn't have to use it.
Did you? Yeah, I was going to say, did you come across any bears?
Yeah, on the kayak,
Yeah.
one right in the far north, and it was walking away on the sea ice, which was great. But this most recent one, I went out to on the sea ice with hunters for a week, and they were on a bear hunt, and they shot 3 bears, which is
Wow.
yeah, wow. It was and I gave a talk last week to Cork University about the ethics of food heritage, and the whole polar bear hunt came up on that because
Yes.
it's not essential, whereas hundreds of years ago it was essential to provide food and clothing and warmth, but they haven't got that excuse anymore. So it was that whole wow, how does that sit with me kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't
Do
think there's
they say that, is it like tradition? They go out, they have a sort of, they're only allowed to shoot a certain amount, or is it?
it's
Yeah.
about 200 a year they can shoot across Greenland, which
Wow.
before I went out there, it was just like, oh my God, I was offered polar bear stew, and I didn't even imagine that was a thing, because you just
don't, do you,
just
as
in
a
the West,
Westerner? Yeah.
it's like the poster boy for Arctic change and climate change and all this, and there they are, they've got an amount they can shoot each year, and they shoot it and eat it, and they use the whole thing gets used.
Yeah.
So it's not at least it's maximized as much as it can be. But yeah, that was a tricky one. Also dogs,
Oh,
shooting and eating dogs as well, which is like, wow,
really?
it's just getting into mind screwing territory here. But
Oh
yeah,
my gosh. It is hard, isn't it? Because you try and not be judgmental on a way of life and something that is traditional to a certain area or a tribe or people. And we're so far the other way, almost too much.
yeah,
You can't say boo to a horse or a dog without being, put on the front of a national newspaper.
yeah.
And it's really hard, isn't it? That balance.
Yeah, because this last one where I ate seal, and the seal is the national dish of Greenland, and there's like estimated to be between 17 and 25 million seals all around the coast of Greenland, and a population of only, it was less than 60,000 people. So it's one of the most sustainable meats you can buy. And again, one of the many things I hadn't realised before I went out to Greenland was that the food that their ancestral traditional foods, whale, walrus, seal, caribou, polar bear, they're some of the only foods that aren't farmed nowadays. They don't do
Yeah.
any of it commercially. It's not for making money. It's purely subsistence hunting, and it would be very difficult to do any kind of similar experiment here on a wild animal, because most of the animals here are farmed super intensively under terrible conditions, and even the wild animals, like venison, for example, they eat are not true to their evolution food source now. So they eat mostly grain and from farmers' fields,
I was
which
going
they
to
wouldn't
say
have
they eat,
eaten,
exactly, they eat from farmers. Yeah.
tens of thousands of years ago at all. So which is part of my my big year-long experiment that I've got coming up soonish, about looking into the 3 different diets and how possible it is to recreate that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to come back to that because I'd love to speak to you about that before we finish. But so is there an animal that has shaped you as a person, and what impact did it have on you, and what made it so special in your life?
Yeah, I was been thinking about this. I was going to see gerbil. That was my first pet.
A gerbil.
I think I'm probably going to go predictable and go for dog. I always wanted a dog as a kid, but we travelled about too much, and I used to be
Yeah.
in tears, pleading and begging. I must have driven my mum and dad mental from just trying to bully them into getting me a dog, which obviously was totally unrealistic because we travelled about so much. So it wasn't until I came back to Suffolk in the east of England, really, where I first had a dog, which is 10 or 12 years ago, which is great. And then
What was
dogs,
it?
it was a spaniel,
Yeah.
a Springer, and well, I've now got a Dalmatian here. I've got about an acre and a half here, and he's fantastic. But dogs are have always have been integral. Whether it's been something that I've always wanted desperately as a kid, when you have
Yes.
kind of everything
Dreams.
else goes out the window and you're totally fixated on, I must have that dog. I want a
Yeah.
dog. I want a dog. To actually getting one here, which has been brilliant. And then obviously in Greenland, the Greenland sled dog has been quite big as well. And part of the experiment I had with the fermented seal was I was taking dog poo samples as well, because I was with a sled dog the whole time, and then the sled dog was put on the same diet as me, so it was
Oh,
eating the fermented seal for the whole 4 weeks as well. So it went from a kind of a sled dog kibble type diet onto
yes.
this fermented seal, and I took all the dog poo
So you went
samples.
it together.
Yeah. And it was to see if I could eat one, if one seal could sustain me for a month. That is what one seal, one man, 1 month, I think
Yeah.
we called it. And I wouldn't have eaten more than a third of the seal in a whole month. And that was
Gosh.
all I would have eaten. So, economically wise, it would have been fantastic. But
Yeah.
luckily, dog was super greedy and polished it off. So, but between the two of us,
Did they like on your adventures, like was the dog like a buddy? Did they become
yeah,
quite reliable on it? Yeah.
Yeah, the plan was for me to ski across Melville Bay with this dog in tow, and a sled behind me, but I got delayed by just over 2 weeks trying to get there because of climate change and weather and all this kind of rubbish, and the ice window, from when it forms to when it starts breaking up, was getting smaller and smaller,
Oh, I
and those
see.
2 weeks took it into a too fragile to be attempted type situation. So I ended up staying in this tiny settlement for the whole 4 weeks, which actually worked out much better in the end because I was able to ferment the seal, and it's like minus 25 degrees. So, the electric blanket I bought to keep the seal from freezing broke on the first day,
Oh
obviously.
no.
It being tech.
Yes.
So yeah, it wouldn't have gone through much of a fermentation, but the plan was for me to have this dog next to me the whole time as my polar bear warning system as well. So, but what UCL are measuring are whether the dog's microbiome would align itself with mine, seeing as we're
Yes.
in
On the
each other's
same.
company the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So but they're still going to analyze it to see what happens. So
Wow.
it's quite an interesting one. Yeah, so dog is
Your dog. Okay. Obviously in the UK, the weather can be, glorious and horrendous, but on your travels, you've obviously seen weather, way more extreme than here in England. Has there been a moment where you were sort of genuinely frightened for your life and you thought, uh-oh, how am I going to get through this?
uh, yeah, there was actually, which was kind of one of those things you're hankering for when you go out on these expeditions, is to kind of lose that cushioning that we have in the West, where you
Yeah.
just ambulance or fire, or police are just at the end of a couple of buttons on the phone. Trying to hark back to that kind of heroic age of Shackleton and Scott and Amundsen and all that is, I don't know, it's got a real strong draw, and it's very hard to kind of recreate that because you need insurance and all that kind of rubbish
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was caught in a storm for 3 days and 3 nights outside Minitsoq, which is just over halfway up the coast of Greenland, and yeah, the tent snapped. The wind picked up the kayak and smashed it through the tent. It cut me under the eye, broke the tent, and the whole tent. It was a blizzard at the time, and the whole tent just collapsed on me. I was soaking wet. And it's minus 12 or whatever, and it was and the noise the tent make actually did contribute to my slight deafness. It was just like, it was like you've been to a gig. At the end of it, you couldn't
Like a
hear
whoom, whoom, whoom. Yeah.
the whole, for like 3 days and 3 nights. It was absolutely crazy. and then I didn't press the emergency button because that would have involved a helicopter and 60 grand's worth of fighting with the insurance company. But luckily, I managed to get through the sat phone, get onto WhatsApp, and message a hunter in the next village, and said my tent's totally destroyed. Everything's wet and cold.
Yeah.
Any chance you can come out? But they couldn't come out until after the storm had passed anyway. So
how did you get dry? How did you not get frostbite and die in -12?
Well, yes, you don't. You just stay wet in your sleeping bag. I had my dry suit on, but you're kind of sweating a bit. It's a dry suit is just totally enclosed.
Oh my gosh!
It was pretty miserable.
And what happened? Yeah, what happens? Like when you said you cut your eye, what happens in the cold? Does it sort of freeze?
It wasn't. It didn't need stitches or anything like that. It wasn't
Okay.
bad. But if it had, I would have had to put a bit of duct tape over it and
hope for the best.
Yeah, all super glue. But yeah.
Have you had training for sort of emergency situations?
No, not really.
Oh my God, Mike!
I did a day course in Dartmoor with a friend of mine actually. So how tourniquets work and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, basic first aid. I've done stuff before, first aid type thing. So I don't think I wasn't totally
prepared. Yes,
prepared, but I was okay with dealing with most stuff. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So I'm going to ask you for a sort of closing reflection, and I think I know what it's going to be. But if you could take one thing from rural life, forward to the rest of your life, a value, a habit, a truth, what would that be?
Yeah, there's so many to choose from. I think the most integral thing that we can do, or what I can do with what I've learned, is education. Education by a country mile. Just because we're not taught about food or anthropology in schools, we just got no awareness of it at all. And as a kid, this is something I say quite a lot. It's like you're taught to believe that what you see on the BBC or the ITV or the evening news is that's what's happening in the world, and the prime minister's the cleverest person in the country, and they're looking out for you. And as you get older, especially nowadays, you realise that's probably not true, and that money might have an influencing kind of factor on everything. So, so education in food, you see it now with food skills is dire everywhere, and then that's just accentuated with each generation, and that whether it's deliberate or not, my cynical mind would say yes, it is. That just plays into the hands of big money, where you become more and more reliant on what the TV tells you to buy, or advertising, hoarding tells you what to buy, or what's low fat, high protein in the supermarket, and none of that messaging is particularly accurate, let alone good for our health. It just is good for the health of the shareholders and the bottom line of the company.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I've learned from you, which I knew deep down, is just keep your diet basic.
Yeah.
As basic as possible.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you're going to be good.
Yeah. And you can only do that if you have education. If you don't know what food is, or where it comes from, or how it's processed, you don't have the tools to better do that. But if you're at least educated and you know the history of the food and our history, evolving with food, then as long as you keep to those kind of core tenets, you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, totally. So, Mike, you are going off on an adventure, and your adventure it's going to be a BBC documentary, isn't it?
Well, there's a BBC documentary coming out on the kayak trip.
Oh, it's coming out on the kayak trip.
Yeah,
okay.
That's that one. But and this forthcoming one, we're talking. Yeah, I filmed the most recent one as well, which is being pitched to various other organisations. But I'm hoping that the next one I've got, which is called the Human Diet Project, which is going to be a year-long project, and that we're looking at possibly doing it as a 6-part series, and that is me going on. So there's basically been three diets of us humans over the last 2 million years, like hunter-gatherer, agricultural, and industrial. And hunter-gatherer was by far the longest one. So for 3 months, I'm going on each of those 3 diets, again, with full blood testing, stool testing and everything. And along the way, we're looking at how possible it is to recreate those diets nowadays, seeing as how we've genetically changed everything, where it's possible to eat those diets. And then we're looking at, the results from all the science tests on my body of those 3 diets. And then I've got a panel of amazing names. You know most of them, but I won't say any of them here because it's not confirmed. From government policy advisors to doctors to nutritionists to anthropologists.
Fantastic.
And we're looking at the results of those 3 diets and seeing if we can come up with an optimum diet for modern times, taking into account those things we said before, like changing climate, 7 billion people. On paper, I'm guessing that the hunter-gatherer one is going to be the one that's most in tune with our bodies, but it's not realistic to do that. And obviously, animal welfare levels at the moment are so poor. Imagine if you put everyone on a carnivore diet, it would be a
disaster, wouldn't it?
It would be a disaster.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. And in reality, is it possible to come up with an optimum diet that's going to kind of reverse all these terrible effects that we're having on diabetes, mental health problems, immune system, all those kind of things that have been affected by the poor, pretty much purely by the poor food that we're eating and we're subjected to. Is it possible to kind of reverse that decline in our general health by readdressing the whole food system? And even if we can't do that, then just to raise awareness of it is going to be incredible.
100%. 100% education, like you said.
People looking at it and go, bloody hell, yes, this is true. We've got to look at a different way of doing things here.
Yeah.
So I'm very hopeful.
Well, I'm wishing you, and I'm sure our listeners will wish you all the luck for this next adventure. It's very exciting, and I can't wait to see the results.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and hearing all your wonderful stories. I hope to see you soon. Just for our listeners, where are you speaking at any events forthcoming up in the summer?
I'm in Edinburgh, Cork, Greenland, Norway and Denmark.
Wow.
But the next 5 weeks are full on trying to finish this book. So I'm not doing anything over summer apart from writing the book. But it'll be up on my website or on my Instagram at Eat Your Environment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening or watching. Please share and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you next week.